No surprise that Marco Rubio is coming out and talking about Israel with Netanyahu visiting the United States. Here he talks about Hamas and saying that there shouldn't be a single hostage, yet does not talk about how the Israeli government has kidnapped thousands of Palestinians and are holding them in torture centers. There is even one video from a torture center played by the Israeli news showing how a Palestinian was essayed to the point of death.
Hello, boys and girls. How are you doing? What are you- And I spoke to Steve Woodcock last night, and he's optimistic that proximity talks will begin fairly soon, uh, expedited and facilitated by the Qataris and the Egyptians. And so, but we've seen talks fall apart in the past at that stage of proximity talks. So I think we're closer, and I think perhaps we're closer than we've been in quite a while, and we're hopeful. But we also recognize there's still some challenges in the way, and one of the fundamental challenges is Hamas's unwillingness to disarm, which would end this conflict immediately. If they
In one of their more recent ceasefire deals, Hamas had agreed to relinquishing government control over Gaza and giving it to a third party, but Netanyahu said no because any agreement to a peace talk or a ceasefire would uh, upset other members in the government and they would dissolve the government because that has been one of their threats.
just release the hostages, there shouldn't be a single hostage. There shouldn't be a single hostage body still left. If they release that and disarm, this would end.
No, it wouldn't because even Netanyahu said if they got all the hostages back, they would still continue to attack Palestinians. So, no, uh, Hamas returning the hostages wouldn't do anything of the sort. Even Israelis know that Bibi Netanyahu doesn't care about the hostages and that they're just used as pawns to justify the genocide in Gaza and the attacks by settlers on the West Bank.
But that said, the Israelis have shown some flexibility here, and so I think we've seen progress made. So we're hopeful, but we also understand that these things have been difficult for a reason. But we're hopeful that they can move to proximity talks pretty quickly and go from there.
And he's also failing to mention the fact that a lot of the peace talks fail because the Israeli government doesn't want them, and Netanyahu always says no or tries to change it to the point where Hamas says no because they don't benefit from the ceasefire deal.
Have a ceasefire in place in the near future. I think the easiest way to end this, that's not what the agreement is, but the easiest way to end this is for all the hostages to be released and for Hamas to disarm. Absent that, the Israelis and Hamas, through the through the mediation of Qatar and Egypt, have reached an understanding on a 60-day ceasefire.
Again, Netanyahu has said if even if the hostages are released, it won't change a thing because they're going to continue to attack Palestinians under the guise of self-defense and fighting Hamas.
And some elements of that with regards to humanitarian aid through international agencies resuming and so forth. But now you've got to have talks about how do you implement that. And that's where this has fallen apart in the past. We're hopeful that'll work out. We're doing everything we can.
See, the whole thing isn't about fighting Hamas and getting rid of a group that supposedly wants to see the end of your existence. This is all about the Israeli government taking over Gaza, taking over the West Bank, making it land for the Israeli government, and taking over other parts of nations in the area so that the Israeli government can create what they call Greater Israel. That has been the plans from the very beginning, and Hamas is just the scapegoat used to